Hello there, guys. Welcome back to D&D Saturday and the new DM channel. I know it's been a while since I dropped a video, a couple of weeks, but I've been in the process of moving. I'm still in Northern California, so it is a rainy Saturday afternoon in Northern California, and I'm almost ready to move into a new place in the city of Ukiah. So that's why I haven't really been keeping up too much with the channel, and I apologize for that. But today, what we're going to do is talk about some of the things that are in the news. I did go ahead and pick up finally um, the Spelljammer set that came out earlier. I guess April, September. I don't know, earlier this year, and it was there was a special uh, Black Friday type holiday sale at the local store, and I was like, why not? I can round out my settings. So now I have all the pretty much all the rule books for 5e, and the big news though the big news this week was that the D&D rule change that Wizards of the Coast is replacing the term race with species. So I wanted to look at this article that came out by it was put out at Polygon. It's Owen Good just a couple of days ago, December 1st, and it talks about how D&D is changing the rules because race is a problematic term, and it says a problem. The subhead says a problematic term is the latest change in the fantasy RPG's largest reckoning. So let's take a look at what this article has to say, and I'll have some thoughts on that. But I don't want to spend too much time on it. The only reason I'm even bringing it up is because, uh, other than being a fairly new item, they've been talking about race for a while, and uh, became an issue with the uh, the Spelljammer books, where they have a race of space monkeys, and there was a big deal about that. So let's see what they have to say. The makers of Dungeons and Dragons will no longer use the term race in the rules and materials describing the inhabitants of their fantasy worlds. Species is now the operative term. Wizards of the Coast said on Thursday. We understand race is a problematic term that has had prejudiced links between real world people and the fantasy peoples of D&D worlds. The studio wrote on D&D Beyond, the online portal and storefront for D&D players. The change comes 3 months after Wizards of the Coast apologized to players for Spelljammer Adventures in Space for its rules of pictures on alien species that many found to be a racist caricature. I didn't really find the Hadozee race or a species to be a racist caricature, but then we'll talk about that. Then in November, Wizards announced it would work with multiple outside cultural consultants to write new material before for its publication. More broadly, D&D players and fans in fantasy films and novels have been reckoning with their favorite franchise problematic history of associating certain non-human species, usually evildoers and Armenians, with racist stereotypes. The writer and game designer James Mendes Holtz noted in 2019 that D&D, like J.R.R. Tolkien, makes race literally real in-game by applying immutable modifiers to character ability scores. So they went ahead. This is what the first thing that they did is that back with the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything book, I think it was 2017, 18, something like that, where that rule book took away the modifiers to ability scores, but they never really addressed like the term race before. The change announced Thursday will go into effect for the next playtest of 1D&D Wizards term for the next edition of Dungeons and Dragons, which is still in development. We have made the decision to move on from using the term race everywhere in 1D&D, and we do not intend to return to that term. Wizards developers wrote on Thursday. Having an open conversation around the term race is both important and challenging, they added. That is why it's vital we foster a positive, open, and understanding dialogue with one another. Okay, guys. So here we go with my overlook. I thought what I would do is, since we're talking about the Spelljammer books, I picked these up at a sale for Black Friday this year and added to my setting collection. And it's a set of 3 books. You've probably seen this already because it's been on the internet. Boo's Astral Menagerie. It's basically like the monster collection book. This is all taking place in the astral plane setting. The astral plane, out in space. It comes with an adventure called The Light of Xerxes. Haven't looked at this book too much because I haven't run this. Just got it. And then the Astral Adventures Guide. So it's kind of like a guide for players, a guide for the dungeon master, and of course, players and dungeon master, and a guide for like a bestiary with the monsters or the creatures that you will encounter, which is the Boo's Astral Menagerie, of course. And I wanted to go over this one because I've seen a lot of reviews online, or a number of reviews about the Spelljammer books. Let's see. But I really haven't seen a lot of people go over some of the monsters or creatures that are in here. So the front cover has Boo, of course. Boo from Minx and Boo, famous space hamster. And if you play D&D dating back, you will be familiar. So it has like a glossary of stat blocks for all the characters. I mean, for all the monsters or the creatures. And then it has, like, of course, this being 5th edition, it has a astral encounters, random encounters table, so you can roll and you get stuff like ship encounters and wild space encounters and astral sea encounters, which is nice. And so let's look at some of these monsters that I liked, or that I thought were pretty cool. I like the astral elves. I think I don't know if you can. That's a good. But there's the stat blocks, the astral, different type of astral elves, and the astral elves. I like the fact that this book, similar to like Volo's Guide to Monsters, the old Volo's book from 2017. This one it's not a high page count like that book by any means, but it does have the lore of the different creatures. So it talks about what the astral elves are. Long ago, some elves ventured into the astral plane to be closer to their gods. There they ceased to age and could exist indefinitely without sustenance. And then it tells you all about what the astral elves do and the different types of astral elves. You have your astral elf warriors and your astral elf honor guards and all that. They have the creatures like the autonoms are pretty fun, and then you have the Braxat monster. And I guess while I'm here, might address. I like this cosmic horror thing. Let's see if I get a good shot of that. So how powerful are these monsters? Well, the cosmic horror. I don't know if I can get a good. But you can see it has 280 hit points. A good look at this thing. 280 hit points. So it's basically like a big hit point bag of hit points. But it does have multiple attacks and legendary actions. Psychic whispers, which can be recharged, and that's pretty cool. It emits dreadful whispers. Excuse me. Emits dreadful whispers in a 60-foot radius, centered on itself. So that's pretty cool. Does other powers, and I think and the GIF, of course, the GIF are really have always been like spacefaring and kind of important. Excuse me. Like a feature, I would say. But you have like different GIFs: the GIF Shock Trooper versus the GIF Warlord. And so while we're here, we come to the Hadozee, and I am going to might as well get the elephant in the room out of the way, because there was a controversy about the Hadozee. It's been written about. You can read about it. It's not. I don't want to go over it. Harp on it to death, because everybody's kind of heard about this by now. And it's basically talking about how the race of the Hadozee. A lot of the information found in this section of the book has been taken away
Wizards of the Coast is took it out from the, and we talked about the fact that they're getting rid of the word race, but they found this passage to be problematic because of they had given the Hadozee a background where they are, you know, they're like slaves on ships because it's all about ship combat and adventures in space, the astral plane. And be that as it may, some people found them offensive. I did not. I think, there's been, I understand people's sensibilities when it comes to race, and I might as well say this now, but I think there's people often mistake or get the concepts of racial versus racist confused. And as I read, can't remember now where I read it, but there's a socialist that talks about the difference, a very big significant difference between being racial, which is referring to a race, referring to like the features of a race, versus being racist. And I think people should be able to understand the distinction. And one thing I heard about the Hadozee in particular, because they're a monkey type race, with like simian features, and but unfortunately, Wizards of the Coast said that unfortunately they gave him a background based on like some classic science fiction, like Planet of the Apes, and some of the tropes, such as the uplifting trope. And you can go into Google and read about uplifting trope that has been used in literature devices in the past, dating back all the way to like, even before the Planet of the Apes or any type of literature on that matter. But the Hadozee shipmate is here. Hadozee warrior. So Hadozees, what are they? They're highly adaptive humanoids with simian features and their own language. Their feet are fully as dexterous as their hands, even to the extent of having three toes to serve as opposite thumbs. Membranes of skin hang loosely from their arms and legs, and they have a background about being. They were kind of sold into slavery, or no, they were basically captured by an evil wizard who was trying to generically re-engineer them so that he could sell them to slavery, and that was what kind of got a bunch of people ticked off, or saying that it was a racist trope. Now, if you go to the Adventurer's Guide for a second, you can see they talk a little bit more about their background, because like I said, I like the fact that the books include the lore, which is something that they took away from the new Monsters of the Multiverse book, which is why I didn't buy it, because I already had the other books that have the lore. So why would I pay money for a book that has less? It doesn't make any sense. But this one has the different races, and the Hadozee on page 13 of the Astral book, and you can't get this, you're not going to be able to get this book anymore, at least in this format. And I'm not going to lie, I wanted to get the original book because this is what the designers intended, and initially, before it got sanitized. And see, there's an image of the Hadozee there, and people are saying that this was like minstrel, a callback to minstrel times. And I don't see how they can make that a correlation. I mean, this is basically a photo or an image of the different type of Hadozee, and the different kinds are like a warrior. There are different classes in Dungeons and Dragons. So obviously, this musician one, there is a bard. And so bards can be any race. They don't have to be Hadozee. They can be any race. They can be any race. They could be like elephants, humanoid, whoever you happen to be playing, And I guess what got people off was that I said I wasn't gonna harp on this too much, because you can go ahead and Google it and read the controversy on your own. It's been talked about to death by now, but that's one of the things that this book features. And then there's astral adventuring. Another thing that people do, and here you can see the different planets and stars. Another thing that people don't like about this book I read is that there are no rules for space combat. Basically, there's a section of ship-to-ship combat on page 24 of the Astral Adventures Guide, which is the rule book, but it's not very extensive. I mean, especially if you compare it to earlier editions, like the second edition Spelljammer. Now, I never played Spelljammer second edition because I pretty much stopped playing after high school, around the start of college, which was right after the Satanic Scare, and then I picked it up again years later. So I never really spent a lot of time with second edition or with the Spelljammer. So it's pretty new to me, but if you compare, maybe I'll do that in a later video, comparing and contrasting. I'm sure that's been done before, but the second edition Spelljammer versus first edition. Now this one has a lot of the different types of ships and the different types of it was like a hammer ship and the ship layout. So if you want to play in the astral plane, or if you're like a fan of Star Trek or just classic science fiction tropes about exploration, ship to ship combat, all that kind of thing, you're not going to find a lot of rules here for that. Like I said, it's a very small section about the combat maneuvers, which people didn't like. But the way I look at it is there is a foundational basis for it in this book. Oh, by the way, just as an aside, it's also fun to look. I was looking at the creatures, and it's also fun to look at the old Fin folio. I read somewhere that the Githyanki, even though they're in the Spelljammer books, made their appearance all the way back. So I looked at my first edition copy of the Fin folio, and I wanted to see if that was true, that it's that the Githyanki are in it, and it is true. I mean, look at this awesome artwork. There is a Githyanki right there, and if you look at the old Fin folio, the Githyanki were very rare, and they were conquered as a race. Millennia ago, this is their backstory. Millennia ago, the Mind Flayers conquered a race of evil humans and bound them to service, usually employing them as slaves, but from time to time selecting particularly choice victims for food. The humans harbored deep resentment for centuries, but could not summon up sufficient strength to free themselves from the Mind Flayers. Gradually, in secret, they developed their own powers and strength, and under the leadership of the supreme leader Gith, they rebelled against their captors, and after a long and vicious struggle, succeeded in gaining their autonomy. Does this sound familiar? Yes, it sounds familiar to me. Like a lot of other science fiction stories, a race subjugates another race. And now in 5e, you can't even use the term race. You have to call them species for some reason. And this is the exact, almost word for word, the exact same, well, there's some variations, but a very similar story for the Githyanki to the Hadozee monkey species. And just because they're a subspecies or portrayed as a simian type, that makes them somehow more racist than any other races that have a similar backstory. I don't know. Call me crazy or call me old-fashioned, but I think that's kind of a little wacky. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So that's my look of the very brief cursory look on some of the creatures and elements of the new Spelljammer book. My verdict is that it was worth picking up, especially because I didn't pay full price. I got a significant reduction of it. I don't know how sales of this one have been coming out. They're coming out with the Dragonlance in a few days, so that'll probably be my last purchase for D&D related for this year, so I can have all the 5e settings. And I don't even know if we're gonna really use them that much anymore, because in 2024 they're gonna have the anniversary, and they're testing the new edition now. So in 2024, some of this information, at least mechanically, is gonna be irrelevant. But at least we'll have the lore, I guess. I'm a bit of a collector and completionist, so I have all the setting books, with a few minor exceptions. I don't have the book on, but I might get it later on if I see some value to it. But right now, I'm not really running a lot of Magic: The Gathering setting stories, so I don't have Strixhaven. But I think that's the only setting book that I don't own from 5th edition. But at any rate, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you like it, go ahead and hit the like or subscribe. Remember to subscribe and continue playing your 5e campaigns. And may the rolls be with you. Peace.